A good evening. How the hell are you? I hope you had a wonderful day. Thank you for joining me once again here on Planet Hog. And, I had something a little different planned for tonight. Something a little bit, I guess you could say it's a little lighter in its tone than what we've been discussing recently. But when I do this, I very much try to tackle the topical issues. Pardon that, I'm recording during normal people living hours, so you'll probably hear some noises in the background. But I try to tackle the topical issues as they happen. And that's for two reasons. Admittedly, number one, to broaden my reach, but also so we can address these things before the state's narrative has been given to you. It's almost like, people's minds are a lot like concrete or clay, easy to shape when it's wet, when it's fresh, but the longer you let it sit, well, the more impossible progressively and ultimately leading to the point of impossibility it becomes to reshape. So today we were going to talk about something else. I'll probably do that tomorrow. But I saw a tweet today that jarred me. It's from a man named, I believe his name was Michael Tracy. But it was basically detailing, as you can read in the headline, that the protesters from the January 6th protest of the defrauded election are basically being tortured in jail. And not basically. We're talking about sleep deprivation, according to this man, and he is sourcing the attorney for these people, so a very credible source. But these people are being deprived of sleep. They're being subjected to beatings, assaults. They're being deprived of free worship. They're being deprived of meeting with their attorneys, and they're in solitary confinement for, according to their attorney, hundreds of days at a time. This is America, folks. This is what Orange Man Bad hath wrought. I have an article here. I'm not going to opine too much to start this. I just kind of want to read this article so we can get the facts out there. And then I will come back and opine on this a bit. Now, I had to do some research. When I say research, really I just had to do a thorough search on DuckDuckGo, which is what I use to find my sources. For those of you who do not know, look, don't take my word for it. And anything I say, don't take my word for it. That's why I give you sources. That's why I cite my sources, because I'm not, the man behind the microphone. I don't know everything. I don't even know half of everything. And that being said, I'm also open to correction. Very much so. I love having my opinions and my thoughts challenged because that's the only way you make them better. However, I discovered a while back that the things I'd been hearing on the internet as far as your searching engines, your algorithms, all of those things, Google, Bing, well, they're being controlled by the very people who are presumably, at least my political adversary. So just like they can demonetize videos, just like they can deboost platforms on YouTube, they can affect what you can reach in their search engines. Then I was introduced to a site called DuckDuckGo. And DuckDuckGo, for the most part, I'm still somewhat of a fledgling user on the engine, but it seems to be on the up and up. As a matter of fact, they even have a feature that allows you to kind of delete any kind of history that you've left or your cookies or whatever it is. So at the very least, they're placating that idea, right? Can't be sure of anything in these times. But I will say this. If you do a search, if you pull up both search engines, you pull up Google or Bing, whichever you prefer, Yahoo, whatever, and you juxtapose that with DuckDuckGo, look up the same things, and you'll see very different results. So anyway, I had to do some searching on that application. And I'm not sponsored by DuckDuckGo, but I do think it's important to give people the right tools. Because for all intents and purposes, if you're looking on Google and Bing, you're only seeing what they want you to see. And it's very dangerous, especially in these times. So we are on Real Clear Politics website. And the headline reads, attorney for Capitol rioters says they are being, quote, tortured in D.C. jail. Joseph McBride, the lawyer for Capitol riot suspect Richard Barnett, told CNN on Tuesday morning that his client and others are being, quote, tortured while being held in jail in Washington, D.C. Quote, solitary confinement is torture, the lawyer said. They're being held for hundreds of days in solitary confinement. They're being beaten. They're being starved. They're being denied medical care. They're being denied the right to worship. They're being cut off from their attorneys. And what's interesting about how he phrased this, which is actually pretty clever how he set this up. Because some people may hear it and say, why do you bring up deny the right to worship? Well, for those of you in the military, you're familiar with the law of armed conflict, LOAC. LOAC is, for those who do not know, a set of standards, a set of rules, basically a set of laws for how we deal with war. But specifically, within it is prescribed how we're allowed to treat prisoners of war. And prisoners of war are allowed a lot of things. They're allowed to exercise. They're not supposed to be questioned without an attorney. That's right, without an attorney. They're not supposed to be abused. They're supposed to be allowed to worship. So this man bringing this up is actually pointing out the fact that these American citizens are actually being treated worse than people we captured from the Taliban. Quote, people are being tortured. Tortured, McBride said. Are you okay with people being tortured 5 miles from the White House? Keep yelling torture, CNN host John Avalon said. We stick with the facts. And there you have, right there in a nutshell, why I say this civil war is inevitable. Smarmy CNN right on the spot. Keep yelling torture. We stick with the facts. When has CNN ever stuck with the facts? You know, I saw a blog today from Outkick where they claim to have uncovered some information dispelling the notion that Don Lemon's actually a journalist. Well, that's not surprising. None of them practice journalism. It's all activism. I don't know how many exposés James O'Keefe has to do with Project Veritas, exposing how these people are basically propaganda for the Democrat Party. Not basically, they are literally propaganda for the Democrat Party. But this is what you get. We'll stick with the facts. That smarmy, condescending attitude that you typically get from liberals. And what's interesting about this is, now if you were talking about a Border Patrol detention center right here, well, Mr. John Avalon would be doing his best to win an Emmy, choking back tears. Wait, you mean they're treating the children like this? Kids in cages. But we're talking about other American citizens, political adversaries, people who, and not even political adversaries in the sense of war. We're just talking about people who disagree with you on a lot of things. Supposedly your neighbors, right? Joe Biden, it's time to heal. It's time to unify. You know, I saw where Joe Biden today, Tim Pool did this, where he was asked about, what was he asked about? Man, I can't remember what it was. I think it was either the lockdowns and how they affected businesses or something along those lines. Something where the Democrats fucked something up. And his response was, what do Republicans think, that Democrats are sucking the blood out of kids? Something way off base. I will link the article down in the description for you to peruse, as well as everything else I referenced today. And number one, not only is that a cop-out, right? He completely sidestepped the question. But the audacity of them to even say that. What do they think? What do Republicans think? That Democrats are sucking the blood out of kids? No, you just sexualize them, sodomize them, kill them, give them experimental drugs, give them experimental and dangerous hormone therapy to change their gender, poison their minds, but no, not suck their blood. Not yet. You know, like I said a while ago, self-awareness is not a liberal strong suit. These are some of the most arrogant people you'll ever meet. So when John Avalon says, we'll stick with the facts, that is him saying, in effect, too bad, don't give a shit. Moving on. Quote, the facts are torture, the lawyer said. And, well, ladies and gentlemen, that is actually how the article ends. So, where does that leave us? Well, you know, it's interesting to me that for the most part, people tend to think when you hear these events happening, any event and all events, people tend to view them as individual instances, occurrences, or episodes happening at some point in time. But my thinking really began to change when I stopped doing that and started viewing society, the world, life as a continuum, as one big equation of ever-shifting variables. And the reason why I bring that up is, you know, earlier when this first happened, you heard the rhetoric from the news. It's insurrection. It was an attempted coup. These people are terrorists. You heard the language portraying these people as if they were Taliban. As if they were there to kill. And then you saw the Democrat politicians acting the part, ducking in cover as if it was some fucking active shooter drill, pretending like their lives were in danger. AOC saying, "I almost died," when not one of these people was carrying a gun. Not one of them. They were carrying flags, and that's basically it. There was one guy arrested who had a pipe bomb, but he wasn't anywhere near this place. Everybody else had flags. As a matter of fact, they encountered the police, and the police let them in. But somehow, these people are terrorists. But somehow, these people were there to destroy Congress. And yet, and still, nothing was destroyed by these people. Not one person was injured by these people. Not one person was killed by these people. But hold on a second. We had just seen an entire summer of buildings burning, people being beaten, people being killed, people being dragged out of their cars and assaulted in front of their families, houses being burned down, businesses being burned down. And we were told that was peaceful protesting. The word insurrection was never used. The word coup was never used. The word riot was never used. And those people came with everything from soup cans to laser pointers. At one point, they made their own little fucking stupid ass shield wall. And people actually got hurt. Officers got hurt. People got killed. There were shootings. But never one time was the word terrorist used. In fact, the Biden administration, at that point in time, they were running their campaign. Kamala Harris's campaign was bailing these motherfuckers out. Never once was the term terrorist used. Never once was the term insurrection used. Never once was the term coup used. But now you have a bunch of, as far as I can tell, disgruntled, patriotic Americans marching peaceably, albeit raucously, but peaceably in the sense that they're not causing any kind of unwanted damage, marching to the Capitol building, where they were let in by police. And don't get me wrong, I think a lot of this was staged. I think there is a contingency of the players involved in this. Namely, that guy that they kept showing pictures of, the quote-unquote shaman of QAnon, the guy with the antler headdress on and the Braveheart American flag style painting on his face. I think he was a plant. Because not all of the protesters are undergoing this. Some of them were let go. Now, wait a minute. If these people are insurrectionists, if these people are there to destroy Congress and destroy America and take over the government, how are some of them being allowed to walk? Well, you're either an undercover or a snitch. How else are you allowed to walk in something as major as this? But you see, most of America is waiting for the media to say this, and they won't. You have to put the pieces together yourself. The media is broken. The media is in bed with the Democrat Party. Popular culture is in bed, and by popular culture, let's be specific. Hollywood, TV, all of your sports, your major sports, all in bed with the Democrat Party. I'm still waiting to see what Troy Aikman is getting under his Christmas tree. Maybe some of you will remember I did an episode on this at the time it happened last year. But there was a flyover at a football game, and he was, quote-unquote, caught on a hot mic. You know, he's a seasoned broadcaster, but somehow he didn't know the microphone was on. Okay. But he was caught on a hot mic, and he said, well, that's not happening with a Kamala Biden ticket. shamelessly plugging this administration. So I'm waiting to see what he gets. Maybe they'll make him commissioner next. But I'm waiting because it's coming. Whatever he gets, it's coming. But I digress. You have now American citizens being tortured in jail on American soil. And what was their crime? Their crime was defying this administration. Their crime was speaking their mind. Their crime was calling out the lie. So that poses a very interesting scenario. Because you see, there's a lot of people who talk the talk. There are a lot of people who will say this is stupid, this is crazy, this is going too far. Oh, fuck all this, fuck woke shit, fuck critical race theory. But they still have their NFL Sunday ticket. But they still have their NBA season tickets. So how sick of it are you really? When you can't even turn off a TV show that is not critical to your life. See, there's a lot of keyboard warriors. There's a lot of people who talk that talk when they're around others who feel the same way. And this is what the Republican Party is notorious for, which is why I don't identify as a Republican, because both Republican politicians and their party members are do-nothings. They talk shit. That's all they do. There's nothing behind it. They are cowards for the most part. And I'm not sitting here talking to you like I'm fucking Hercules. But I'll tell you what I am. I am a man who was always taught to stick to my principles. And I thank my father and my grandfather, Pop for that. And my uncles. I am a man that was taught you do not bend on your values. You stand strong and you take what's coming, but you do not bend on your values. So no, I'm not sitting here talking like fucking John Rambo. I am saying that there's a difference between people like me and people who, the constituency of the Republican Party. And I'm not saying I'm the only one. I'm sure there are many others like that. Perhaps you are one of those as well. And what I am saying is it's time for people like us to start to get together. It's time to start aligning yourself with people who think like you think and are willing to act like you're willing to act. Because again, this story right here is going to scare a portion of the so-called Trump supporters, of the so-called, conservatives who are sick of all the shit. That's going to scare, this story right here is going to scare a portion of them back into submission. They'll go back home, turn on whatever they want to watch and forget this ever happened and hope it all goes away. But the good news is, to affect change in society, you don't need the majority. You really don't. I can't remember where I heard this. I don't know if it was Jocko that said this. I don't remember where I heard this. But you don't need the majority. You just need a very dedicated portion of a minority. And it's time for people who think like that to start to galvanize and to start to gather amongst each other. Because what's coming, in my opinion, invariably either results in or will be kicked off and furthered by armed conflict. I talked yesterday about Joe Biden trying to disarm the American population. I talked about this concerted effort of this administration and other Democrats before him to take away people's guns. And now Joe Biden actually came out and said it because his brain is so decayed now that lying, I really believe it's almost impossible for this man to lie, because lying relies on more bandwidth, for lack of a better term, of your brain. It's hard to lie. You have to be able to create with your mind. And I think his mind is atrophied to the point where that's no longer a possibility. Truth is easy. So he said the quiet part out loud last night and said that, or not last night, but I believe it was Tuesday night or Wednesday night, one of those two, where he said that whenever they had the town hall, that he said, we're coming for all guns that can hold multiple rounds. And he honed in on 9mm, but as I outlined yesterday, well, that also pertains to shotguns, that also pertains to revolvers, that basically pertains to everything except a goddamn blunderbuss. Or a classic flintlock musket. And then I also juxtapose that with an address that Fidel Castro gave after they took power. Now, the interesting thing about that address, I don't know if I mentioned it yesterday, I'll mention it now. A couple of days after he gave that speech about why do you need guns? You don't need guns. It's over. We're not fascists. We're not terrorists. We're not a totalitarian regime. We're not a dictatorship. Within days of that speech, his first wave of executions began. And I'm not laughing at people losing their lives. That's not why I'm laughing. I'm laughing at how stupid people are. And just because you want something to be some way does not dismiss your obligation to live in the realm of reality. See, just because you wish the world was a utopia does not make it a utopia. You still have to live in the world that you live in. I could live in the projects and wish that my neighborhood was safe. Does that mean that I shouldn't lock my doors anymore? No, you'd be an imbecile to do that. But yet and still, that's where we find ourselves. And we find people who would rather stick their head in the sand and find anything to distract them from the task at hand. Everything from, I'm a big basketball fan. I don't want to deprive myself of that. Seems silly to just deprive myself of basketball. I love basketball. All the way down to, I have a family and I need to take care of my family. Now, family is a very convenient excuse. You see, because when people like me, who do not have children, admittedly, push you on the issue, it's like, well, you don't have kids. You don't know what it's like. No, I don't. I do not know what it's like to have kids. But what I will tell you is this. It seems rudimentary to me that sacrificing a few moments of now for your child's entire tomorrow is not only dangerously short-sighted, but is incredibly stupid and selfish. And that's what it really is. It's about passing the buck onto your kids. It's about not wanting to have to roll your sleeves up and actually have to stand for something. Because people in America have become comfortable. Please excuse that. I don't live next to Negroes, but I don't understand why the music is so loud. And we're not in Orlando, so I'm not expecting a fuzzy, there'd be some fuzzy dice and some, some guitars and like, why does all Latin music sound the fucking same? Anyway, I'm digressing. It just seems very recreant for someone to use their family as an excuse, and cowardly to use their family as political cover as to why they can't take a stand, as why they have to compromise their morals. I understand that there's a responsibility that transcends you. But I also understand, just like in math, there's an order of operations, right? When you have multiple problems, when you have multiple equations that need solving, there's a prescribed order that describes which one takes precedence. Which is most important, which is first, which is second, which is third. That way we understand and there's comprehension. Well, the same thing applies here. Yes, you do have a family. Yes, you are obligated to your family. But what world are you leaving them behind? And shouldn't that, as a parent, be your chief concern? Shouldn't the world that you're leaving your child be paramount over a few fleeting moments of comfort? People have become comfortable. And I said before, one of my biggest takeaways from COVID and the lockdowns was the fact that so many Americans are okay with the notion, with the prospect of living on their knees so long as the floor is padded. Well, I've heard it said that you can have comfort or you can have freedom, but you can't have both. And I've pondered that saying because, when people make statements that are so finite, right? When they say these things that are just so, it's set in stone, it's either this or that. Well, it prompts me to think about any kind of contingency in which that can be proven wrong. Any kind of scenario where it's okay, where you might have both. But I'll tell you what, our founding father said it as well. The cost of freedom is eternal vigilance. And we've slacked on the vigilance. All of us, myself included. Because for so long we've rested on our laurels. We've rested on, they don't mean harm. They're not out to get us. Maybe they're a little misguided. And it's time to stop giving these motherfuckers that benefit of the doubt. Because right now they have American citizens in jail that they are torturing for disagreeing with them. And if you are stupid enough to believe that eventually, because you will have a contingency, it says, this is my side. Hey, I'm on their side. Hey, we're good. Understand how this ends. It ends the way it always ends. Right? Remember that saying? Or it's not a saying, it's a poem. And I'm about to butcher it, but it was like first they came for, the Russians, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Russian. Then they came for the Christians, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Christian. Then they came for the conservatives, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a conservative. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up for me. Understand that they're clearing their opposition right now. They're attacking the force that poses the greatest threat to them. I don't know if any of you have played a strategy game such as maybe Risk or Civilization, something along those lines, where you're battling multiple people at the same time. But there's a scenario where you have, let's say, 3 people, right, including yourself. So you have 2 other people that are your adversarial with, one of whom is the weakest person in the game. The other is your chief rival, someone who could beat you if the right scenario presents itself. Well, when you're at your apex, when you are your strongest, who do you attack first? Well, if you're smart, you attack the person that poses the threat to you. You leave the weak for the end because they are no threat. Because that's an easy victory. They pose no immediate threat to you, but the people who do, well, we need to get them out of the way while we're still willing and able. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Anyway, folks, that's what I got for you guys today. I appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. And we'll be back tomorrow with something maybe a little bit lighter, depending upon the news. But look, I don't want to pull punches. I want to talk about the shit that leaves an impression on me. And how could this not? For all of the going on and, people like to have movies in their head of what it would be like if they're in the situation. And, I'm going to be like I see in that action movie where the guy's like, fuck you. And, he takes the torture and then he survives. Those people are in the real shit. And nobody's coming. They're all by themselves in solitary confinement, possibly for days at a time. No mom, no dad, no friends, just them. a dark cell, whatever rodents are in there with them, whatever scraps of food they can get, the beatings they get. It's just them and their thoughts. So perhaps this is a good litmus test for people to really kind of gauge if they're really, to borrow the vernacular, if they're really about that life or not. Anyway, that's what I got. You guys be good. I will talk to you tomorrow. Peace.